interest in cricket went from almost nothing to an obsession in an instant, lurching into action in the same way that a sleepy dog might when it hears a key turning slowly in a lock. My father passed me a copy of that day's Times, still warm from another cat, this time a large ginger one who had been sleeping on it. I sat down on the floor of my father's study and read all of the cricket reports and articles in it. I then went to the pile of back issues that teetered on a creaking chair in the kitchen and wormed my way through all of them, ignoring the headlines on the front pages that must have been concerned with unrest in the Gulf, and instead turned to one of the back pages where I could read about bowlers in good rhythm or batsmen struggling to convert their county form into test runs. Cricket, I soon realised, had its own language, and it was one with which I instantly fell in love. Outside of articles on cricket, one could never conceive of people being described as wristy or happen upon a sentence that read, "Although proving adept at playing inside out, he was less sure sweeping against the turning ball and eventually perished as he top-edged to a leg gully that had been moved finer." The fact that at first I didn't understand a single word of it did nothing to dampen my newfound fervour. As well as its language, I also found great pleasure in analysing the statistics that were carefully laid out in each day's edition. I realised that if I attacked the last week's papers in order and spread them all out on the kitchen table, I could follow the course of each county game day by day. Each game was a self-contained story. I would read the preview that was printed on the morning of a game's start, and then monitor the scorecards and reports that appeared in the next 4 days' editions, thus feeling that I myself was involved in each game's ebb and flow. In some games one side would dominate throughout. In other games the initiative would be seized and re-seized in unexpected brilliant moments, and thus the balance of power would swing back and forth wildly like a lunatic on the end of a rope. I spent entire days just doing this. I tried to share some of my new knowledge with my older brother Edmund, who liked to spend all his waking hours reading novels and listening to music. Several times I bounded up the stairs to his room at the top of the house armed with some bits of newspaper that I thought contained interesting tales, but he could never really demonstrate any interest in what I was telling him. He would merely wait until I had finished my prepared speech and then say, "Call me Ed." He had, in fairness, just commenced the messy business of being a teenager, and so who knows what sort of thing was going on inside that body or head of his. Instead, I would report my observations to my father, who would say things like, "Yes, cricket can be like chess sometimes." I thought that cricket seemed nothing whatsoever like chess. Whenever had a chess player been praised for being strung off his legs? Alongside such insane utterances, my father was also able to impart more practical advice. This included showing me how to use the teletext service on the television so that I could check for cricket news and scores throughout each day. It was through this medium that I eventually learnt that England's squad for the last test of our series against the West Indies had been announced. I recognised many of the names from the county scores that I'd been reading in the Times. G. Gooch and H. Morris played for Essex and Glamorgan, I knew, and M. Atherton played for Lancashire. A man called A. Stewart had been recalled, whom I knew to be a Surrey player. Another player had also been recalled with a name far more recognisable than all the other names put together: I.T. Botham. In the event, I was unable to watch any of the match's coverage on television. My father, as had long been agreed, had taken my brother and me away on a holiday to Ireland. My mother, though too busy to commit to any substantial time away herself, felt that the three of us would benefit from a camping trip. People that knew us thought that camping seemed a strange thing to attempt by a family that hadn't ever really managed to master simple domestic life. We were, after all, a family that sometimes sat down together for supper when my mother had returned exhausted from London, only to discover that none of us had actually thought to prepare anything to eat. Thus we'd sit around the dinner table discussing our respective days and eating nothing but cheese and tinned fish. We were all very excited about the idea of camping, though, and had gone and rented an enormous tent as well as a portable cooking stove and gas canisters. But being excited about the idea of something and actually having any aptitude for it are very different things. In the end, of the 18 nights that we spent away from home, a mere 6 were spent sleeping in the tent that had been hired for this purpose. We had a terribly depressing experience in a place called Spittle that was so wet and gloomy that my brother and I decided that camping was not for us. Privately, I suspect my father had realised very early on in the holiday that we were simply not up to its demands. All that I really liked about this way of life, it turned out, was starting fires, an activity that was forbidden at most campsites. On one disastrous evening I was stung on the ankle by a wasp, and in a state of confused shock all that I was capable of doing was jumping up and down while shouting, my head, which meant that the source of my panic took far longer for my father to uncover than it should have done. Ed, meanwhile, had a habit of letting his mind wander at crucial points during our frequently fraught attempts to put up the tent. Just as my father was saying something along the lines of, "Now we all need to pull at the same time," he'd realised that Ed had let go of his end and was instead practising chords on an imaginary guitar. "The rest of us are trying to put a tent up, Ed. What are you doing?" my father would ask through gritted teeth.